Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. Let me know if you can hear me okay. Looks like my stream quality sucks today, unfortunately. Ugh. Hopefully we can limp along through it. I won't actually be doing these here for very much longer. So, yeah, anyway, we'll talk about that more later. Hello. Okay, so I actually figured out how to hook up my wireless mic. For the longest time, I didn't think that I could hook up my wireless mic to my laptop, and so that's why the audio on my live is always kind of weird. Like, I really hated the audio in our live painting last week. It sounded like it was in a tin can. And then today I figured out, oh yeah, all I have to do is do that, and now I can use my wireless mic. So the quality of our live streams just got better. Okay, so I'm gonna keep an eye on the stream. If it starts looking really horrible, guys, please let me know. So first of all, happy Mother's Day to everyone who is a mother of a person child or a fur baby. I am the mother of 2 fur babies, so it's happy Mother's Day to me as well. And my mother's not here today. Whatever, that's all right. I'll see her tomorrow. So for those of you who have never been to one of these directed paintings today, and I don't know if you can hear that. There's been cars revving all day long. It's making me crazy. Anyway, if you've never been to one of these today, what's going to happen is I'm going to ask you for some suggestions. When I ask you for a suggestion, you're going to want to pick a number between 1 and 10, because that's how many numbers I have in the cup here. So like you'll say blue, 5, whatever. And I will have already picked a number, and then we'll see whoever is the closest to that number, and I'll use your suggestion. And then we'll just kind of talk about things as we go. You can ask questions and, everything just like normal. Sometimes after one of these, I really like what we come up with, so I work it up into a painting. And that's actually where the painting from 2 weeks ago came from, the rustic flower vase. So that's what oh, and feather babies. I apologize, Kelly. I did miss feather babies. They count too. So if you have questions while we're going along, please make sure, just like in viewing parties, put them in all caps. If I seem to be skipping over your question, I'm probably not seeing it. I swear I'm not ignoring you. So, and Vince just joined us. Hello, Vince. And we have 20 people in here. I wonder if I should make some more numbers real quick. Should I make some more numbers real quick? I have the technology. I can do that real quick. So let me make a couple more numbers. We're going to just do this the quick and dirty way. They're not going to be pretty like the other numbers. And then we will get started. So be thinking, the first thing I want, don't make a guess. Don't pick a number yet, because I don't have the numbers made yet. Excuse me. The first thing I want is a type of painting. What type of a painting are we going to do? By type, I mean, are we doing a, what is that called? A still life, a landscape? Don't give me, too overly specific things. Just like a type of a painting, whatever. So be thinking about that for a minute, and as soon as I make a couple more numbers, I'll tell you what numbers you can guess between, and then you can make your guesses. I'm almost done. Almost. 2 more numbers. We're going to have a really weird set of numbers here today. Okay. Let me pick my number. This is super scientific, my little fancy coffee mug full of paper numbers. Okay. So I have my number. I see what it is. I'm going to set it down on top of my easel over here so that you can see that I've drawn a number, but you can't see what it is. So, okay, go ahead and tell me what kind of a painting we're going to do and pick a number with it. Oh, that's really bright, isn't it? Let's turn that down a little bit. Tiny bit more. There we go. All right, Eileen with the landscape at 9, 10 with the abstract at 9, Deb Surreal 8, Donna Seascape 27. We only go up to 17. Impressionist, landscape, surreal, abstract. My gosh, you guys, so many good suggestions. I'll just give you a couple more seconds and then I'll flip it over. It's 1 through 17. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and flip over the number now. No more guessing. And we have 9, number 9. So we actually had 2 number 9s, and it was Tan and Eileen, a landscape and an abstract. So how about we mix those together and we do an abstract landscape? I like that idea. All right, so we have number 9. We're going to go with an abstract landscape. Let's see. Give me just a second to think about it, because this could go so many ways. And abstract landscapes are something that I really love, and I've done quite a lot of, you know, especially in kind of on my own. In fact, yeah, okay. I'm going to give myself black, white, and burnt umber, because those are standard colors that I always give myself when I do abstract landscapes. So I want you guys to give me 2 colors and pick a number between 1 and 17. Oh, hang on. Let me pick another number. Okay. 2 colors and then pick a number 1 through 17. Well, I get out my black, white, and burnt umber. Ooh, vivid lime and magenta. That sounds interesting. 2 colors, guys. Not just 1 color. I need 2 colors. Few more seconds. Heather really wants beach umbrellas. All right, we are gonna flip it on over now. And we have number 5. So we only had 1 person who guessed number 5, and that was Barbara, and she said Cad Red and Cad Orange. So this could be a very interesting landscape. We are gonna have kind of a hot and fiery landscape. So I've got my colors here, and I guess we can go ahead and get started. Actually, I want to grab something. So give me 2 seconds, because when I do abstract landscapes, a lot of times, where did it go? There it is. When I do abstract landscapes, a lot of times I like to use a palette knife for at least a part of it. Was that weird to you guys that I walked away and you could hear me just the same as if I was still right here? That was probably kind of strange, huh? All right, So let's talk about abstract landscapes for a second. To me, an abstract landscape is best done if you kind of look at the area and break it down into very simple shapes, very simple elements. So I wish I had a photo loaded up to show you already. Let me see if I can find one on my phone real quick. And we will see. I'll kind of tell you what I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm on Pixabay. I'm just going to search landscape. Just very general. And okay. So I kind of like this. And of course, it's a gorgeous photo. And I know I'm going to show you guys and you're going to be like, yes, show us how to paint that. And maybe someday we can do that. I actually really like this photo. But for the purpose of an abstract landscape, it's really not going to resemble this photo at all, okay? So here is the image that I found. Can you see that okay? So when I look at this for an abstract landscape, what I'm basically going to look at, let me actually flip you to the, let's flip you to here so that you can see it a little bit better. So this is the picture that I chose. So for the purposes of an abstract landscape, I'm really going to look at what are the important shapes and elements, and all detail is going to go out the window. I'm not going to put any detail into this. So when I look at this, I see really three basic elements that can be broken down into a few. So we have the sky, obviously. We've got the sky up here. And then we've got the water over here in the distance. We've got our little rocky outcrop here. And so I guess I'm really focusing on four. The water, the rocky outcrop, and then right through here is kind of, it's like a mix between the water and the rock. So that kind of pulls forward to us. So those are the elements that I'm going to focus on. As far as details go, sorry about that. As far as details go, I'm not going to focus on details at all for this painting. So I think, to me anyway, abstract is more about kind of capturing the mood of things. You know, it leaves your mind open to imagination and interpretation, and all of the details that aren't there, your brain is kind of free to fill in the blank spots. And I think that that's why a lot of people don't like abstract, or they feel like they don't get it, because they look at it and they're like, well, I don't know what it's supposed to be. Well, maybe it's not supposed to be anything. Maybe it's just supposed to be whatever your first impression of it is. So if you look at this once we're done with it and you don't see a landscape, you see, I don't know, a face or whatever, that's not wrong. It's okay to interpret a piece of art however you need to, however you want to. So let's go ahead and jump into it and get started. All right, so if you can't see what I'm doing at any time here, just scream at me, okay? I'm not going to use a palette knife for this whole thing, but I definitely want to use a palette knife for part of it. All right, let's throw out, you know, I think I'm just going to stick with, I'm not going to put any black out just yet. I'm really going to use black and white toward the end. So I'm going to put out some burnt umber. Yes, this is an old plate that I probably used last week. It's really stormy today, like it's been raining all day. And so now it's kind of clearing up, so it gets really bright. So I apologize if my camera gets too bright. I'll try and keep an eye on it so that you guys don't get blinded. But if I put it on auto brightness, it's way too dark. It doesn't matter how bright it is in here, it like dims itself, so it gets way too dark. All right, and my orange won't open, there we go. Oh, and I have exciting things to tell you guys, but you know how I am, like during the viewing parties, I always tell you the exciting news in the middle or toward the end. So we're gonna do the same thing here. I am gonna put a little bit of white. Okay. So I'm looking at the sky here, and I kind of want, I don't know if you can see it if I lay it down here. Hang on, I've got some notifications coming through that are gonna kind of keep popping up and bugging us. So I'm gonna mute that. Okay. So let's see if I can move this down here so you can at least see it a little bit, just a little bit. I'm gonna kind of take the important shapes that I like in the sky. Again, I'm not gonna paint clouds. I'm really just gonna kind of insinuate the movements and the shapes that I see there. Very, very insinuated. I think I'm gonna use my brush actually. So I'm gonna use my half inch flat brush. And I'm gonna go with, since I don't have the same colors that are in there, and that's perfectly fine, I'm gonna grab some burnt umber and some red. I'm gonna be really loose with my mixtures here. And I'm just gonna kind of start scribbling them on. And remember, this is probably not gonna, this very well may not turn out fabulous, and that's okay. I'm gonna pick up a little bit of white and orange. I'm really just kind of picking up colors as they kind of call to me. I have no plan here. A little more orange, a little more white. Just kind of scrubbing on with the tip of the brush. Super light pressure if I want to create a soft transition, and then just a little bit more like that if I don't really care, if I want a little bit more of a ragged transition. And I like to keep an interesting mix between the two. You know, if it's all very blendy and smooth, I think that's a little less interesting than if we've got some areas that are super smooth and blendy, and then other areas that are very like, you know, linear and very, very sharp. I haven't cleaned off my brush at all. A lot of times when I'm doing abstract or even, you know, kind of impressionistic type painting, I won't clean off my brush. Like, I'll go through an entire painting just jumping from one color to the next without cleaning my brush. And I know some of you can't handle that. It freaks you out to, you know, pick up green when you've got red on your brush, or, you know, something like that. And I like little things like that. That's upside down, isn't it? Let me flip that over for you. I did have it flipped over. I don't know how it keeps, what's going on? I don't know how it keeps going back. Give me a sec. Here we go. Why is that? It's fighting with me. There we go. Much better. Okay. And I'm just going to smooth a little bit of this out, particularly down here toward the horizon. Tiny bit of water. And I can't see what you're saying just yet, so if you're asking me questions, hang tight. I'll jump back over there in just a minute. I'm just going to smooth out a little bit of this. Sometimes if you get a hard line like that right there, if you put your brush on the edge, see how I've got it just like standing up? Take the very edge of it. That kind of helps smooth lines out. Sometimes if you go over it like this, it won't really get rid of it, but like that, it will. I just picked up a little point of red. There we go. I like that. Okay, now that's pretty wet, so I'm gonna let that dry. before I come back. I do want to add just a little bit to the sky, but that's a good start to kind of block in our sky. Let's go see if you guys have anything that you need. Oh yeah, I'm sorry you guys, this is an 8 by 10. Yeah. Typically we've done 12 by 16s, but it just feels like for something like this where we don't really know what we're doing, we're just kind of going with the flow, that seems way too big to me. So I cut it down to an 8 by 10 today. But I don't feel like a 5 by 7 is quite large enough for this. So, oh yeah, Barbara said she never would have thought to mix burnt umber with the red. Burnt umber is a great way to deepen red, and you know, it kind of darkens it, but it doesn't change it too much. If you add black to red, particularly cooler reds, not so much with cad red, but with cooler reds, it almost will turn it purple. So like take primary red and add a hint of black. Just like black will turn yellow to green, it will turn some reds to purple, because like Mars Black is very blue based. It's got a lot of blue into it. So if you want to darken cad red just a bit, but maintain life and that cad red hue, excuse me, mix a little bit of burnt umber in there. It works really, really nice. Do I have used canvas sheets to practice with? No. I do have a couple cheap pads of watercolor paper that I'll sometimes just like quickly do some ideas on, but for the most part I just paint over old canvases over and over and over again. I'm actually going to get just a little bit more white. Sometimes it helps me to be able to see it outside of, I talked about that before, but I think a lot of times when you see me painting live, you'll see me kind of painting like this, like looking at my screen rather than looking at what I'm actually painting. See, it just got darker in here now. Skylights are really fun until you're trying to record a painting video and you can't control it. Can't control the light. I'm just scratching in a little bit of white toward the horizon there. There's almost no paint on my brush, but this color I'm working on is still slightly damp, and my brush has a good amount of water in it. It's not running everywhere, but it's damper than I would normally use it. Let's just throw a little bit more white right here. Maybe not quite that much. A little bit of orange. So, you know, this kind of goes back to what we talked about in the live painting last week, where somebody asked, you know, about how do I take an image and translate it into a painting? Well, it depends on what your goals are. So often we get really hung up on, you know, realism. If I'm going to paint this, then I have to render every detail. I have to get the colors exactly right. I've got to make it look just like the photo. Why? Use the photo as nothing but a starting point. Nothing but a starting point. And then let your preferences, let your abilities, just let yourself fill in the blanks. Copying the image exactly, you know, in a super realistic way, that's not the only goal in the world. That's some people's goal, and that's exactly what they want, and it's the only thing they want, and that's fine. That's not what I want. I don't have any desire to be the kind of artist who can, you know, perfectly emulate a photo, take a photo and just paint it and have people go, wow, it looks just like the photo. I mean, that's impressive. It takes an amount of skill to do that, but, you know, I don't want to do that. That's not how I want to paint. Okay, let's block in our water. back here. Actually, let me see if you guys have any questions before I move on. Rantalicious. Deb's counting the rands. Oh, hello, Gretchen. I didn't see you there. And anybody else that I might have missed that came in since we started. Okay, so I'm going to start with the water. Now, I notice in the water here, it's darker back toward the horizon. And I intentionally made my sky lighter toward the horizon because I knew I wanted to make the horizon of the water darker so that there was a definition between the two of them. So I'm almost going to kind of mimic the colors that I have in the sky, but maybe just alter them just a hint. So I'm going to, again, get my red and my brown because that's what I have up here. But I'm going to go a little bit more on the brown side. This is hard to get a straight line because I'm painting at like a stretched out angle. If that's totally crooked, I apologize, guys. Painting at an angle is weird. It's not too bad. However, I don't like how solid that horizon line is. So I cleaned off my brush, I dried it on a paper towel, and flat, light pressure, I'm just gonna kind of let the tip of my brush, see that? I'm not jamming down, I'm not gonna do that. See how my brush is just resting in my hand and touching the canvas? That's what I'm gonna do right here. My thumb is only gonna cover it just so that I can move the brush as I drag my hand back. But because I talked for so long, my paint kind of dried and it didn't really work. That's a little bit better. So I just wanted to blur that line just a little bit, maybe just a little bit more. The fact that it goes back into that brown is enough to help us say, oh, there's the horizon. That's where the water starts. So back into my red brown. Maybe I'll pick up a hint of orange. Let's get really interesting with our colors here. A little speck of water. I gotta stand up. And so again, there's a little bit of water ripple in here, but I'm not gonna worry about that. It's not important. Those aren't important details. You know, the change in the horizon, the change in the colors, all of that can be enough to say this is water. I don't have to add the ripples to make it look like water. And if somebody doesn't see water when they look at it, then that's okay too. I just picked up a hint of brown and a hint of white. A little speck of water. Another way I'm kind of saying there's a difference between the water and the sky. See how much texture I have in the sky? So that it almost insinuates clouds, but down here it's smoother, but it's very similar colors. So that kind of says this is water reflecting those colors from the sky. So that's another reason why clouds aren't necessarily important to say this is sky, and ripples aren't important to say this is water. I'm gonna get some orange and some white because I don't have any yellow. Not worried about the horizon back here because my rocky outcrop is going to be there. There's that super light pressure again. My brush is just touching, I'm not pushing down on it. And see how I can just streak those colors. So they're still individuals. I still have like that dark streak there, but they start to kind of integrate a little bit more. I'm just going to pick up white because we're much lighter, kind of in this area. Little drip of water. What I really hope that you guys ever get out of any abstract videos we do, you know, because every time we do an abstract, I always see people try to do exactly the same painting that I did. But you really can't. I wouldn't be able to do it again because abstracts are let them be very, where you are, who you are, and what you feel and think in that moment. You don't have to try to create something that people see or, instinctually understand. It's about how you express yourself, how you feel, and the way that everybody would interpret this landscape painting. If we're all sitting down and using the same photo as a reference, if you're not trying to copy what I'm doing, if you're just listening to what I'm saying and then finding that place in you and interpreting it through you, then you're going to have a completely different painting than everyone else. And that is good. That's a good thing. Let's see. I rant when we talk about abstracts, and sometimes I feel like I'm beating a dead horse. So let's forget the pun. I know that they're the metaphor. I know that that's a really horrible metaphor. Art yoga. Yes, I do art yoga. Oh, beautiful soul rant. Thank you. Okay, so we now have our sky, which I think I am going to come back and just kind of, because another element I find really important in this image is the sun, right? So the sun is also helping us understand the different elements in the painting. In fact, the sun is reflecting or is visible in 3 elements. It's visible in the sky, so I definitely want to say pow, there's the sun in the sky. It's reflecting on the horizon, pow, there's the horizon. And it's reflecting in our foreground water. So bam, we're going to have a sun there as well. I want to make sure that this area appears very close to us. And one of the ways I'm going to make it appear close to us is by using a palette knife. Where this is all fairly smooth, that kind of pushes it in the distance, right? Because as things move away from us, they kind of blur, you lose a lot of detail. So if something is closer to us, you might see a little bit more texture and differences in color and everything. So I'm going to use the palette knife on some of these closer areas. But before we do that, I think I am going to fill in this bottom section because we also have some smooth areas. So I'm not going to use my palette knife just yet. I'm just going to kind of use a good mixture of colors. I'm going to put out a little bit more white though, because it is a little on the lighter side. And if I decide I don't want it that light later, I can make it darker. Okay. I'm just going to get kind of a sloppy mix of just a little bit of each color. I just picked up a tiny bit of burnt umber, tiny bit of cadmium red, and a tiny bit of cadmium orange, and a goodly amount of white. Pretty much just using the tip of the brush again. I'll probably use it flat from time to time, but mostly just the tip. And I'll just kind of start scooting it in here. Tiny drip of water just helps keep everything super smooth. Kind of like that unexpected red streak there. So I know whenever we do abstracts, somebody always says, I've always wanted to try an abstract, but I'm afraid, or, whatever. So I want to know, what is your experience with abstracts? If it's something you've never done before, I want to hear about that, and I want to hear why. And be honest, if it's that you don't like abstracts and you think that abstracts are a waste of time to both paint and look at, tell me that. I'm open to conversations. Just because I feel like abstracts are a perfectly valid form of artistic expression doesn't mean everybody does. And it doesn't mean that anybody who doesn't is wrong or, art ignorant, or I'm going to tell you that you're wrong. It's not valid to you, and that's okay. There's a lot of art forms that people just fall all over that I look at and go, eh. But that doesn't make that art form, unvaluable. It doesn't mean that anybody who does like it that I think is dumb or wrong. It just means it doesn't do anything for me. I don't like it. And that's okay. I think it would be so boring if we all liked the exact same art. What would there be to talk about? What would we share with art? Nobody would be impressed by art anymore. We'd all be like, yep, I painted the exact same thing today. Yep, I like that too. And the conversation would be over. I think it's much more interesting when we disagree with art, as long as it's respectful, telling somebody that what they like is stupid is not respectful. So let's not do that. We're always going to be nice to each other. I'm just filling in that little spot there. Okay, so I asked you guys to tell me about your experiences with abstract art. So I'm going to pop back over to chat so that I can see what you're saying. Heather says, I overwork the paint and then mess it up. I also end up with too much symmetry. And also, I never step away. Okay, well, now you know exactly what you don't like about what you do. So it's time to start working on those. If you overwork it, intentionally underwork it. See an ugly brush stroke end? Say, I'm going to leave it, and leave it. If everything is too symmetrical, then intentionally make things completely unsymmetrical. Don't worry about composition. Just make things, lopsided. If you know that you never step away from your canvas, it's time to start stepping away from your canvas. Let's see. Barbara's doing an abstract Buddha now. Nice. Yep, we've got people who love it, people who always do it, people who feel like they work too tight for it. But there's very tight and very mathematical and geometric abstract too. Abstract doesn't have to be, messy or splatters or, it doesn't have to be anything like this. It can be completely geometric and ultra symmetrical and tight. I mean, abstract can be those things. Heather always thinks abstract means outer space for some reason. Then maybe you should start a line of abstract space paintings. Oh, thanks, Tan. Tan never appreciated abstract paintings until she saw how I did it and learned to appreciate it now. Good, good. God, this thing, it jumps around, so if I miss you. Good. It's helped so with some emotions. And I've seen some of her abstracts, and they're incredible. Yes, Deb. Deb, that's what I wanted to hear. Deb says, in abstract, I don't care about the product. You guys, this is super important. Listen, I don't care about the product. I care about the process, getting lost in the process. And she says, but somehow it usually comes out good anyway. Part of that is because you don't care about the product. Part of that is because you're not judging it. You're not sitting there micromanaging every detail, every brush stroke. You are involved in the process and enjoying it. And that will typically show on a canvas. You know, if you stress while you're painting and obsess, it will show. Almost always it will show. If you just enjoy and you just feel, that will show too. And all of us, I mean, me included, you know, not all the time, but a lot of times we all get into the point where all we care about is the product. This has to look good. Oh, this looks like crap. I don't know how to do this. We judge every step of the way. It's a judgment. It's a judgment. It's a judgment. Think about it. If you had somebody standing behind you while you were painting, and every time you laid down a brush stroke, they verbally made a judgment or a criticism about that brush stroke, it would kind of wear you down. It's the same thing when we do that to ourselves. So, I mean, sometimes you have to do that, right? If you're doing a commission, somebody's paid you like $3,000 for a big old painting, there has to be a bit of that kind of judgment in there, yeah? But you need to give yourself, you have to find a time, a space, a particular painting where you can sit down and just get lost in the process and completely forego judgments. Do not criticize yourself. If there's something on your painting that you're like, I don't like that, just be like, okay, we'll deal with it later. Thank you for bringing that up, Deb. That is super, super important. Cheryl is trying to overcome not liking abstract art. I didn't like it before because I didn't understand it and it made me feel art dumb. Cheryl, I'm really glad that you brought that up because that, I think, is a huge part of why so many people don't like abstract art. You know, it's easy to say, I don't like it, because they feel like the other alternative is to say, oh, I'm art dumb. But there's nothing art dumb about it. That comes from these pretentious people who stand around going, oh, this painting is discussing the existential crisis of, you know, the affairs in the Middle East or whatever, right? I mean, it's pretentious speak. And that's not to say that an artist may not have put those kinds of feelings or thoughts into the painting that they did, but people who throw around things like that, I think that they do make the layperson feel art dumb, and that's too bad. Anybody can appreciate any piece of art. A person who has never even heard the word art before, who has never seen a piece of art before, can look at any painting they want and appreciate it. Just because they don't know anything doesn't mean that they don't have the right to like it, or they don't have the right to dislike it for their own personal reasons. You don't have to look at a piece of art and go, oh, I know exactly what the artist intended here, and it's all in the use of their color and their lines, and this was influenced. You don't have to any of that. It is okay to do nothing but stop and look at a painting and inside think, I have no idea what this means, but I love it. It means nothing to me. I have no idea what anybody thinks it means, but I love it and I can't tell you why. That's okay. That's perfectly okay. It's also okay to look at a painting, let's say that this is on a gallery wall, which this will probably never be on a gallery wall. Let's say it's on a gallery wall, and me as the artist, I feel like it's a completed seascape landscape, okay? You walk up to it and you think, ooh, that looks like rust, like, distressed metal. It's very industrial. If I were standing right next to you and you said that to me, I'd be like, cool. I love your interpretation, because that's okay too. Yeah, there better be some rant emojis, because when I get started talking about abstract art, man, I don't shut up. Okay. Sloan says, I struggle wanting it to look perfect and even. Let that go. If you want things to look perfect and even, then intentionally sit down and make things look chaotic and messy. It'll be good for you. I promise it will be good for you. Kelly, what did I say about criticisms? I'm not even going to read your comment. You know what you said. Yeah, Pat's working on drawing upside down. Should try to paint that way too. Absolutely. Good. Gretchen said, bye-bye judgment. Oh, good, you guys. I'm glad that you liked my rants. Okay. Gretchen, don't smoke. But I appreciate that. Okay, let's do, of course my phone locked now. Let's do our hillside, or this rocky outcrop. So I'm gonna get my palette knife. I'm gonna use pretty dark colors because the rocky outcrop, it's quite dark, right? And it's against kind of the brightest areas in the sky. And so that's gonna kind of make it our focal point. So we wanna make sure that it stays dark, because when your darkest value is, hang on, sorry. Oh, I thought I was watching the other screen. Anyway, when your darkest value is right against your brightest value, that creates a point of interest. So I'm not gonna mix any white into this, long story short. So I'm gonna take my palette knife, I'm gonna scrape out some brown, I'm gonna scrape out some red, I'm gonna scrape out some orange, maybe a little more brown because that orange is pretty light. And I've got this marbled mess on my palette knife. Actually, I'm gonna squish that off because I didn't have it loaded evenly. And then I'm gonna scrape into it. So now I've got it loaded a little bit more evenly around the edge of my knife. And I'm just gonna generally, let's see, my horizon's up right about here. Notice that the mountain starts down. It doesn't start right on the horizon. If it were right on the horizon, that would say that it is like so far in the distance that you almost can't see it. We're gonna pull it down below the horizon there, because that's gonna help say it's a little bit closer to us than the horizon. I'm just gonna kind of scratch it in here. I need to switch over to here so I can see, okay. Just kind of scratching it in there. Pulling some of this thinner. Let's get a little bit of a darker color in there. Excuse me, my throat is starting to get dry. I might have to go grab my drink. I'm just kind of pulling my shape. And see, I'm not worried about I've got breaks in there, but there's breaks in our water too, right? So that's okay. And we're gonna pull it right about there. Just gonna pull some of this in kind of almost randomy directions. A little red and orange in there. You can kind of lay it down so that's nice and heavy, and then you can kind of scratch some of it off. I didn't paint in that whole area there, so we've got some white of the canvas, but that's okay. This might be where my abstract kind of loses itself, and you guys are like, we had some good rants at least. Painting looks terrible, but that's okay. I can see my reference image better when I look at my computer too, so I'm looking at my reference image there. Might need some more brown, but I'm being lazy. Actually, I think I want a little hint of yellow. right over in here. Orange, not yellow. I don't have any yellow. Oops. Are you guys getting dizzy? Yeah, I need some more brown. And get just a little bit more brown. And just kind of scratching it into this shape again. I don't feel like it was dark enough. I want this hill to be substantially darker because it's in our distance. So let's wipe, as I still have orange and everything on here. Just wipe that on my paper towel. Maybe I'll let it dry for a minute. Let's try something. I could totally ruin it here, guys. So I'm gonna go back over to and see what you're saying. Oh, Kelly, did I? Sorry, Kelly. I thought you were saying that. No, Kelly, I thought you were talking bad about your own painting. Sorry. Because I was so far behind in chat, sometimes I'll see things and I don't understand the context because you said it like 15 minutes ago in my rant. But I thought you were being mean to your painting. But as long as you weren't, we're good. Okay, so I have a little extra water, a little bit of white. We're gonna try something here. Let's see. I'm gonna kind of pull some of this in. It's a little drier. That's okay. Oh, some of it's kind of wetting down a bit. I'm just gonna pull it in there a little. See what happens. I have no idea what's gonna happen. It might look totally, there we go. It might look totally bizarre, and that's okay. Kind of dashing into a little bit of that so that in some areas there's an obvious transition between like this rocky area that I'm making, and in some areas it's not. It's, you know, very blurred, so you can't really tell what I intend to be water and what I intend to be kind of the rocks. Don't get, this is where you could easily get caught up trying to get detailed. Do not get detailed. Don't try to get detailed. All we're doing is kind of tying the two elements together. So see, my brush is pretty much flat. I'm kind of just like scrubbing it in here. Just almost scrubbing it wherever my palette knife skipped. I'm just kind of touching into there. And I can smear it with my finger a little bit. I can get a little bit of water. If something looks totally awful, I can, you know, change it completely. Cover it with something else entirely. I hope that's not making you dizzy. Because I think it's probably wiggling my camera around, isn't it? Ooh, I like it when I accidentally hit one of those spots that's still wet and it totally streaks in. That's nice. And some of this is kind of pulling parts of the ground up. So now I look at this and I feel like this is almost up a little higher and the water might be flowing down a little bit there. So it gives you little ideas. So I might kind of run with that and, you know, work on insinuating that a little bit more. And remember, guys, layers are your friend. So when we get into, you know, things like this and you're like, oh, I just messed it up, I took out too much of my palette knife or whatever, remember that if you add another layer over it, it's going to start looking better. So never lay down your layer and go, oh, I ruined it. Another layer might be just what you need to fix it all up. Oh, I picked up a little bit more brown there. I'm just mostly using white, but occasionally I'll pick up another little bit of a color if I feel like it's just a little bit too light or I'm not getting quite as much blend as I want. It does kind of look like fog, huh? The blurry blend is a whole lot of fabulousness. Well, thanks. I picked up a little extra brown there. So in some of these areas that were brown, I'm going to pull some of that ever so lightly into these lighter areas. Yeah, I like that. Got the magic. I don't know, guys. If I were painting this for myself and not talking, sometimes it's really hard to paint off the top of my head and talk at the same time, then I might be able to, you know, come up with something that I really liked or at least kind of get lost in the process. But when I am explaining it as I'm going, then I have a much harder time kind of getting into the process. I'm going to have to let that part dry because it's getting weird. Yeah, let's let that part dry because it's kind of icky. I'm going to get a little bit more brown, maybe a little bit of orange. This is just way too hot for me, way too hot. So I'm going to take it down a bit with some darker colors. I'll leave a hint of that red poking through, but I did not like that bright red corner. Let's see how that looks. Let me look at it from a distance. Oh, it's kind of messy. That's okay. What's going on with our sky? That feels pretty dry. Oh, I need a new paper towel. Hang on, guys. Sorry. We'll make it look more like rocks. It kind of got away from me there, but like I said, we're going to add some layers, and so that kind of helps bring that too. Okay, I'm going to go back to my palette knife. Actually, I am going to put a little hint of black out now. Yeah, that's starting to dry. Because those rocks are not quite dark enough. They got to be dark. So I'm going to get some brown, lay it down there, pull a little black into it. I'm not really worried about mixing them. I'm just picking it up on there. Do the heavy body Liquitex paints dry as dark as the basics? I haven't noticed as much color shift from drying with the heavy bodies. There's still going to be a little bit, and that's because the binder, so you know, if you look at matte medium, right? If you look at matte medium in the bottle, or you dump some out onto your palette, it almost looks white. It's kind of milky. The binders that are put into the paints are that same color. They're a little bit milky when they're wet, just like matte medium. But then when they dry, they become clear, and that's why you get the color shift. It's the binder. But because the heavy body paints, just a little bit more brown, because the heavy body paints have a lot more pigment load, like pigment to binder ratio, then there's not quite as much color shift as there is with the basics, but there'll probably still be some. I'm like scraping it. Can you see that? I'm not laying it down like butter. I'm kind of scraping it. I'm going to pick up just a hint of red there to make sure that my ground stays a little separate from the hill. And my palette knife stroke is just a little bit smoother too. That might just always be ugly. That's okay. I know I just yelled at you guys for critical talk, and then here I am, I'm like, it's just ugly. But see, we all get caught up in it. Again, I'm just kind of scraping it, but I'm not being overly aggressive with it. I'm just kind of saying where I want to keep those ideas of rocks. That's starting to get a little bit more. But see, now my painting is changing completely from the image. In the image, it's more like, my stupid phone keeps falling asleep. In the image, it's more like flat, like really, really flat rocks that have a little bit of water kind of pooled in them. And mine is starting to look a little bit more like, you know, like high beach rocks that have some faces. And so rather than fighting that and saying, it doesn't look like the photo, I'm just going to go with it. If it's going to look like beach rocks that are standing up, then I'm going to intentionally put some little faces on the rocks. Let's kind of scratch some of that over there. And again, just like in the sky, notice I have a hard edge right here, but then it's much softer on this side. So that helps kind of keep that interest that we talked about. I need to flip back over here. I keep getting behind thinking that I need to put paint somewhere, but I'm looking at it on YouTube, so I'm seeing it on the delay. So I go to put paint somewhere and I'm like, oh, I already put paint there. Let's really kind of make this section nice and rocky. This part is the closest to us. So my colors are quite separate. See how they're not mixed at all. And I'm going to kind of set that in here, kind of scoot it. Maybe I'll even take just a tiny piece of white and a tiny piece of orange and just kind of give it like a little reflection or something. I don't know. Some kind of something in there. It's okay if you leave your palette knife sitting in water. I won't yell at you for that one. Okay. I feel like I want to do kind of what we did in here, out here, but this is pretty much dry. That's probably not going to work then, is that? Let's think about that for a minute. I'm just going to scratch some white into the center of some of these larger shapes. Just a little bit. almost feels like it's flowing down. So you can tell, you can make something appear to be flowing down without actually drawing, you know, like a very definite, it's just the direction your brush stroke goes. So like all my brush strokes are pretty much going side to side, but here I just kind of pulled it that way, and that kind of helps give the illusion that it's moving downward also. You can even do that like maybe right here a bit. Just kind of pull a piece down right there. And then we're getting some little levels. But see how I started with a reference image and I'm totally off the deep end now. I am absolutely not following my reference image at all anymore, and I don't even care. I'm glad. Okay, I think I'm gonna let that sit for a minute. I'm not 100% on it, but it's okay. Let's jump over into chat and see what you guys got. Ooh, see what you guys got going on. Who is painting? Is anybody painting with me? I want to know kind of what's going on with your painting. So tell me what's going on. It does look like it's going downhill. Good. Sorry guys, one sec. Gretchen can't do two things at once. Apparently I can't either. Thank you, Heather. I don't know that it's gorgeous, but I'm not unhappy with it. But here's another thing, you guys. This is very often how I kind of start with an idea. So, you know, I may start with a photo and just kind of start doing this. And as I go, I'm like, oh, well, I like this, but I hate this part. And I like this part, but I hate this part. And, you know, all of that is perfectly fine because my intention is not to create the painting right off the bat. My intention is to work out some ideas, work out some techniques, play with some colors, and kind of get that out. And then once I'm done, so it's just like, you know, a couple weeks ago when we did this one. This was just a very quick, I got some ideas out. Then I had a place that I could start and I could sit down and say, okay, I like this, I don't like this. This would work better if it were like this. And I do it again. And I take those things that I didn't like and I change them in the next version. And I take those things that I did like and I try to incorporate them in the next version. And a painting, I feel like a painting should evolve. A painting, rarely, it does happen, but rarely does a painting just go boom and be amazing. It does take some thought, some planning, some effort, all of those things. And I think that we don't give the evolution of the painting enough credit. So please give the evolution some credit. Allow your painting to evolve. Painting process rant, yes. Okay, let's add our sun because I'm really excited about that part. Typically I would do the sun last because that's kind of like the really interesting part of the painting, and I think it's always better to do the interesting part last, but we're just gonna jump ahead. So I'm gonna use my number 8 Filbert. This poor Filbert, I think I'm gonna have to stop using him in videos because it's like to the point now, like it only bends about, about that far down. Can you see that? Because I don't wash it properly. But yeah, so my poor little Filbert. I'm gonna get, let me look at my, so we can see where our sun is. Remember, we have sun showing in 3 different sections. So I'm going to get some white. I'm going to use pure white. I'm not mixing anything else in it, just white. And the first sun is really kind of coming off of the edge. This is really all the detail I'm going to put. I want to make sure that I put it in a place where I can see all 3 of them in a line. So I'm going to move my sun just a little bit. Well, no, I think that'll be good. The reason I'm putting it right here, aside from the fact that that's roughly where it is in the image, is because I want to make sure that I have it right here on my horizon, right next to my rocks. But I also need a spot down here where it can show up. So I'll actually start right there on my horizon. See, I didn't try and draw a sun. It's just like a white blob. Directly up from that, I'm going to do the same thing. I might even just kind of scratch out the shape a bit to indicate that maybe there's some clouds really close to it that are kind of reflecting it, okay? And now I'm going to pick up a good amount of white. About like that. It's a nice ball of white. I want to come directly down from those. Make sure they're in line. You don't want them skewed because the sun wouldn't reflect, you know, like here and then over here and then back over here. Directly down. I'm going to kind of see how I set my brush on the side like we talked about last week, and I'm going to roll it so I can just about like deposit that little blob. And it's got a lot of texture, and it's got a lot of texture because I want it to be very obvious. All 3 of these little suns have quite a bit of texture. Does the sun actually have texture in when it reflects on things? No. But it kind of helps draw our attention to it, and that is my goal. So that's why it has a little bit more texture to it. So from here, and we can do that if you want, if you guys want, we can spend a little bit more time. Here, I'll show this so that you can see how much texture is in there. There's quite a bit of texture in those 3 suns. You can't. Yeah, you can kind of tell. There you go. That top sun up on the edge, and that one on the horizon is quite chunky. And this one down here, see that? So much texture. I would say those probably have more texture than even the rocks back here. So from here, like in my process, because obviously there's things that I like and there's things that I don't like, and there's things that if I don't like it, I could easily change it on this canvas, but there's other things that are more like I would have had to have planned for that. And so I would, from here, kind of take those things. So let's go through. I'll show you some of the things that I really like and some of the things I don't like, and what I would do to change that the next time. Okay, because you should always plan on having a next time, even if you don't end up having a next time. So remember, we always say, this isn't my last layer. Always say, this isn't my final painting. Do it like that. Because if you go into it with like, oh, this has to be perfect this time, and then it's not, you're not going to want to do it again because you already put all of that emotion and like into it. So this is not my final painting. So if I were going to do this again, I would probably plan out the color positioning in my sky a little bit more. I really like in my image how I've kind of got this little bit of a, like a brighter streak with that darkness right there in the middle, kind of coming from the sun. So I might kind of plan that just a little bit more, just plan the placement of my colors a bit. I would not necessarily go and try and get like the shapes and the renderings of the clouds or anything like that. I do like the colors that we ended up using, and I think I like it better than, I like it better than the purple that's in there. That purple in there, it's really pleasing with the yellows and the oranges, but I feel like it's a little awkward with the the super dark muted colors in the rocks. It just feels awkward to me. What did I just do? Oh, I just went out of it. There we go. But that's just a personal preference. It doesn't mean that if you did it that way, I would think, ew, I wish they wouldn't have used that purple. It's just my preference. Okay, so I'd plan out the placement of the colors of my sky just a little bit more. I'd probably go darker in my horizon. It ended up a little light, so I'd go darker there. With the rocks here, I probably would almost fuzz them out into this. I know in our image it doesn't have that. It's very distinct, but I feel like I would probably like it to just barely fuzz out, just a little bit of softer line into this part of the water, at least in part of it, maybe not in all of it. I would have planned my layers a little bit better here so that it looked more like water and less like fog, because I would want it to be just a little bit waterier. And that would probably take a couple of layers. I would probably, let's see, how would I do that? How would I get the look that I wanted? I'd probably start with a brush first and kind of lay in the rock areas, maybe like with my filbert. Kind of come in here with the darker colors and almost like sketch them in, and then come back and work on the reflection areas, then maybe go back and sketch a little bit more of the rock areas and not worry about doing palette knife there. I'd probably just use the palette knife in the rocks back here a little bit. So that's what I would do next, and I would repaint the whole thing with those ideas in mind, and then from there kind of compare the two and see again, what do I like, what do I not like, how can I change this? Yeah, that's pretty much my process. Do you guys do things like that, or do you pretty much one and done it? If it doesn't turn out the first time, you're just done. I'm too chill. Not always. I freak out. We all freak out. I freak out too. Good, 10. I'm glad. We all have dozens of started and unfinished paintings, Barbara. Yep, that's a real thing. That's a thing that happens. But do we ever kind of do, like I said, where you start a painting and even if you hate it, you see it through to the end and then stop and look at it and decide, the elements that you do and you don't like, how you would do it different, like what techniques would you use, what would you do to make it different, and then start it over. I think that this is especially important when you're doing commissions. I know a lot of you do commissions and you feel like you just have to knock it out. Man, if I were doing a commission, I would probably tear through at least a half a dozen versions of it before I landed on the finished painting that went to the customer. At least half a dozen. I mean, it would depend on how in-depth or intense the painting was, but yeah, I would not, even with a reference photo, I would be like, all right, gotta make this perfect. I would practice it and practice it and practice it until I knew exactly what I needed to do to knock out the painting that I wanted. Yep, Barbara does that. Heather's 50-50 on it. Pat says paper is good to block out the image. So let's see. Deb, I'm just starting to learn how to revisit paintings. And while it's frustrating, it's also liberating to know it's not a one-shot only chance. I think that the frustration goes away after a while once you realize that the process is extremely valuable to you as an artist and to the finished painting. It becomes less like work. It becomes less frustrating. Because if you mess it up, it doesn't matter. You're going to do it again anyway. On the next go, change something. So next week's painting, which we'll talk about give me just a minute and we'll go into that. But next week's painting, for example, you know, I've done that with it. You know, I've kind of gone back and forth on a couple of things, you know, whether it's a technique or it's a color or it's a set of colors or it's a positioning of one element or whatever. I've done it over and over and over just to try out this one element, just to change this one piece, because I can't just change that one piece and look at the painting and know if it works. I have to paint the whole thing all over again. And then I was like, okay, I'm settled. That's what I'm going to do. And then I was looking at it and I was like, but I wonder if I just take this piece and move it from over here to over here, if that will be better. Like, I was all set. This is what I'm going to do. So now tonight I'm going to go and I'm going to paint it all over again just so I can move one element from one side to the other. And by then I'll be settled and I'll know exactly what it is that I'm going to do. So let's see, a couple other comments and then I'll tell you about next week's painting. Yep, layers, layers, layers. You can redo it and rework it. Absolutely. How do you teach yourself not to overwork paint? By overworking paint. Guys, we learn how to do things right by doing them wrong. You know, if you know that you overwork paint, the first step is to recognize it. The next step is to recognize when you're about to do it and go, no, I challenge myself to just leave that there. It's ugly and I don't like it, but I'm going to leave it there. I challenge myself to leave it there. And the more you do that, the more you challenge yourself to just leave it alone, the easier it gets and the less you find yourself overworking things. Oh, good, Deb. Yes. I'm so glad that I could impress you guys with this one because I'm not in love with it, but I recognize the things that I'm not in love with it, and I recognize that overall this has potential. So it may be something that I end up working on for, you know, a future video sometime. Okay, so next week, I don't have an image to share with you just yet, but I will. Maybe tonight. Definitely before you see the video, you'll know what we're painting. So it'll come soon. But here's the thing, guys, is I think I want to do it live with you again. So, but Sunday is Mother's Day. I was thinking about just doing the painting live with you today instead of doing the directed painting. But I decided that there were, like I said, still an element or two that I wanted to work on. So Monday, I know it's Monday and a lot of you will be at work, but you know, there will be the replay before it goes out to everybody on Tuesday. So Monday sometime, I will go live with you guys and we will do next week's painting. Are you guys excited about that? I hope so. I hope there's enough of you excited about it that we don't have like 4 people on a Monday and I'm like, oh, I should never broadcast on Mondays again. I'm thinking it will probably be fairly early in the day. I know that doesn't work for everybody's schedule, but the replay will be there. So likes that. Does everybody like that? I will get it scheduled and I'll get a post out to you on the time and everything very, very soon. It might be tonight. It might not be until tomorrow, but bring Mr. Moon. I can't. Mr. Moon gets mad when I bring him here now. He's 100% a house cat now, but we'll be back together with Mr. Moon soon, I promise. Oh, Barbara and Tan will miss it, but the replay will be there and you'll get to see it before anybody else still. I promise. I promise. I promise. So, Cheryl will be there. Yes. All right, guys. Tell me if there's any other questions you have, if there's anything else that you want to say or know or, you know, whatever, let me know. And maybe this is something that I'll work on for a minute, and I'll kind of show you how I took the things that I didn't like and changed it into something else. And if you do that, if you do this and you know, kind of work through it and work through it and work through it until you have something that you really like, I really would like to see your process. So, you know, like in the Jams group, in one post, please. Don't post, you know, process photo after process photo all down the page, but in one post, upload your process photos, you know, of your very first painting, your second one, your third one, however many it took for you to get to a finished result that you liked. I'm really interested in seeing that. No, it won't be too early. I'm thinking like maybe noon my time. So I know that's earlier than what we usually do on like Sundays, but I don't think it should be too bad. I hope not, anyway. So, anything else, you guys? I can't believe we only went for... Cheryl painted along, and it's supremely abstract. Yes. I want to see. Post them in Jams, guys, and tag me, because I really want to see. Please remember that if you tag me, you can almost be guaranteed that I'll see it, almost. But if you don't tag me, it's quite possible that I will miss it entirely. If you, for some reason, can't tag me, I know some people have a hard time with it, just comment and ask someone to tag me in the comments, because I really want to see what you guys do with these. This was a quick one, you guys. I expected to be here for quite a bit longer. If you come up with any questions after the fact, you can ask them in the Jams group, or you can just leave a comment in the video once it's done processing, and I'll keep an eye on that, and I'll answer your questions. So, all right. If nobody has any other questions, then I guess we'll just say goodbye for tonight. But we'll be back on Monday. Yay! With a new painting that you guys will get to see done live, and everybody else will have to watch on the replay. So we might do those for a few weeks, and then I might go public with live videos. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how I feel. So, all right, guys. Well, I am going to take off then, and I will see you very, very soon. So thanks for coming by, as always, and I can't wait to see what you do with it. So